Hi, Nicholas, and let's look at this one. So I think this is a great start and a pretty good animation. So I think here you can do two things. So in terms of what to do with the bottom part, we can do a couple of things, but our options are push it up, create a new mass, or uh, just break it up. Since it's more of a magic explosion, usually it's better to either push it up or create a new mass and overlap it. So what it means is we can do something like this. So you see, we create this mass, we let it rise up, we push it up, and it's swirling and separating from this straight directional energy that we had before. And then we can let like the bottom stuff go up slower, for example, and we can be bolder with our masses. So instead of trying to keep one and the same mass for the rotation, we can either do the motion through the details, for example, like it's going here. So here we're showing the rotation and the change through details, or we can just outright separate masses. So this is here, and this stuff pushes out this one, creates a bigger mass, and it rises up while this is being pushed down. And then it rises. Kind of a similar idea. So we create this mass and it separates, while here we kind of overlap more. So we create a new mass at the bottom that overlaps this stuff and breaks up the perfect circle. So here we can do kind of both or one, and that would look like something like this. So we have our initial spark, boom, and we can be bigger and bolder with our choices. Create more directional, more contrasting shapes, more big versus small and stuff like that. And then we create this mass. Then we do the rotation part. And here we start defining structure. So I start defining that this here is a separate scene from the scene at the top. So it's not just a straight line, but rather a combination of volumes. So this becomes this volume, for example. And this becomes this volume. And this becomes this volume. So I've outlined my separation of volumes. And now all that I have to do is worry about the internal motion. So I'll define the structure. I'll start defining it lightly. And then as it slows down, as it cools down, the structure will become more and more clear and apparent. So here, for example, we'll go, okay, so this rises as well, maybe at a different speed. Or even being raised more. And this rises up. This part also rises up, separates out, and becomes its own thing in the general structure, while still also being kind of on its own and kind of part of the whole. And now I'm clearly defining the structure, and I'm doing the rotation part. I can do it much faster at the start, so I can make a bigger change here. So here I can do bigger changes, bolder changes. So this can go all the way here. And then I can create new volumes here. At the start, we can push stuff and do more radical changes. So this can rotate all the way over here. Or even I can do this, create a new mass here, and let this mass move more down. So this moves down, while this mass pushes kind of up. Or like this one is pushing up, slower rather. So it's still moving up, but slower, while this is moving much faster and kind of pushing out the other mass down relatively. I'm basically tracking the rotation of these edges because they define the form. And this one, again, it shows us the rotation of the volume. And I can choose and do like a faster rotation. So this goes down, actually down. And this one moves up. And I can choose which part goes faster, which part goes slower. Maybe it goes at an angle. And then after a few fast frames, we transition to a slower change. And we can decide to either barely change the bottom part and just let it kind of separate out into volumes, or we can decide to give it like some more energy at the bottom as well, and kind of it catches up to the top a bit. So it goes 1, 2, and then we kind of create a curve pattern at the bottom. So like rising smoke, like rising incense smoke, it will move and create a subtle wave. Because it's bigger, the wave will be more subtle than say a normal incense smoke. Incense. And again, it's better if it has some nice variation. And we can look at different examples of how we can do that. But the general principle is pretty much the same everywhere. Then it slowly rises up and changes the form. And for example, this is going a bit faster. You can even create new masses. And so we've got our rotation. And not the best design, but that's just the general principle. So we basically go from fast change of form to very slow rotation. And we move the shapes through either detail or through the creation of new shapes. that push out the old ones out of the way. And this is best done with a couple keys to first plan your design and like the changes, because first changes can be pretty fast and they can change a lot, like this like 2-3 frames, and then you have to keep it very subtle. And so you can do like one keyframe from this and like to the end, and then just do a very gradual, very clear in between. You need to just slow down. And that's basically how it works. So this is one way, and the other way, instead of just pushing this up, we can overlap it. So the bottom mass is so big, for example, and so fast that we create this. And instead of just letting it fully separate, we'll let the bottom mass build up more, and we kind of have more, I don't know, something like this. So 1, 2, and then this part also goes up, for example. And it has its own structure. It also can change faster at the start and then kind of slow down. Then it needs to interact with the volume that we already have, either overlap it or push it out of the wave or something else. And we have some masses rising up here as well. And then we have a slowdown. So something like this, for example. Maybe expands in volume. And that's just for one directional explosion that goes in one way. So we either push the volume and let it separate and become its own thing, but built into the structure and defining the clear overlap. So it's basically on the top, in the front, overlapping all the other shapes. Or we basically let the other volumes come in and overshadow that volume, push it through, push it out of the way, or do other stuff with it. And that's pretty much it. And you do need either detail on the shape or additional masses to create rotation, because with that alone, keeping only the same masses, it will be almost impossible to create a clear rotation, because there is very little to go off of. So we don't have enough to express the change in space. So I read a bit of rotation because the masses are moving, but there isn't anything inside or additionally to really push and clarify that motion, to make that very obvious, basically. And here we use a lot of more obvious transitions between shapes in the silhouette, as well as inside in terms of the detail, to really show that, oh yeah, this is a separate scene and it's moving faster and it's increasing, and this is a separate scene and it was moving faster, but now it's moving slower and it's decreasing, which will show us an obvious change and motion in space, because one goes towards us or like up and it expands, and the other one contracts. So things like that. And yeah, separating it out or pushing other volumes through will help us kind of solve that issue. And here's basically the approach with a combination of both. So here, if we look at this explosion, kind of does both. So some parts and masses kind of go up and separate, like the top part goes up and separates. So it was this clear one thing, then it goes up and starts separating a bit. And it separates a bit. But we also have this like the bottom thing going up as well, creating a more clear silhouette. And so it's not just one straight line. We have some nice variation of things going with different directions, but with very clear intention of the most masses and energy going in this direction. So this is like a primary direction of the explosion, and everything else is kind of more subtle. And notice that the rotation is showed through these details on the sphere, and also through the silhouette, like through one mass increasing in size, this one, and other stuff slowly decreasing in size relative to the other mass. So hopefully this explains things a bit, and if you have some questions, let me know. See you!